Howdy folks, welcome to part 4 of what was supposed to be a 3-part series on my buddy Chuck's Jeep here. The last video we got the carburetor rebuilt, we got it idling right, but discovered that it was missing a freeze plug on the engine block. So this video we're going to go ahead and get the freeze plug installed. We also noticed off camera after I'd finished shooting the last video that we had a hole in the lower radiator hose, so we're going to be replacing that, and we're also going ahead and kind of revamping the fuel system. So stick around. We'll go ahead and get this started and get this hopefully we can get it running and driving by the end of today. So stick around. Yeah, I don't know how well this is going to show it. That freeze plug that's missing is right behind the exhaust. So we're going to have to pull the exhaust and most likely pull the voltage regulator and a few other things out of here in order to fix that. We're going to have to look at all the rest of them, make sure that they're not rusted out or anything else like that. Yay fun. Okay, we got our freeze plug hole in there, and we got to get that cleaned up. Well, I'm hoping we can get in here with this thing and get this cleaned up in here. We may have to pull the frickin' exhaust. Well, that's better. Oh yeah. Much better. Well, there's no way I'm going to be able to get in there and swing a hammer well enough to be able to seat these freeze plugs with the exhaust in the way. So we get to pull the exhaust, which means we got to drop the front drive line and then disconnect the pipe from the rest of the exhaust. Fortunately, the way that these things are built, it's not an overly difficult job. So let's get to it. Okay, maybe not that one. Okay, that is far enough out of the way I can get in and install that freeze plug. Okay, let's degrease the hole in the block. And the freeze plug. And we're going to put some anaerobic gasket sealer on it. I found that this stuff works really pretty good for just about anything I do. And let's hoping that we can get her set in there and have enough room to swing the hammer. Not really. We're gonna have to get a big punch in here. It's a good thing that we're done. I can pick up that stupid drift later. And there we have it. One freeze plug installed. We'll let this gasket eliminator set up, and then we'll fill her full of water tomorrow, or coolant. Not water, coolant. Okay, let's go ahead and get this radiator hose changed first things. And there we go. You can see right there, splitting the radiator hose. I don't know if this one is a whole lot better, but doesn't appear to have any splits or holes in it. There it is. Of course, now the wind decides that it wants to come up and screw up the sound. Okay, well, that radiator hose is on, so let's close up the drain cock and try to refill the system and see if we got any leaks. Oh, there we go. Well, it's 1 gallon in. Well, I've got more into it than I did the other day before I put the replace the freeze plug. So, and I'm not getting any splashes on the ground. That's a good thing. And I'm not seeing or feeling any leaks around the radiator hose. So we'll let this stuff kind of percolate down while I get some more coolant mixed up and top it off. All right, now here's kind of a handy tip. I have a catch pan down there that's full of coolant that's brand new, but it does have some little bits of debris in it. Get yourself a container. This one happens to be an old school coolant container or water container. It's got the spout on it, so it makes it easier to go ahead and put it into the radiator without spilling a whole bunch. Get yourself a funnel. This one, I don't know if you can see it, has got a nice little fine mesh screen down at the bottom. If you can't find one with a fine mesh screen, go to Harbor Freight and pick up a bunch of paint strainers. These things work great, and I've used them before before I got this thing here. Look, with a bigger funnel, you can see how nasty that, all the little bits and pieces of junk that's falling down in there. But with the screen on it, all you got to do is just dump her on in there, and that'll strain it out. You can see how that strainer caught a bunch of that stuff in there. And then just dump it back in the radiator. Now, one of the things that I like to do, and you saw me dump the coolant out of this windshield washer jug. This jug's got a nice big round base on it. Those little skinny jugs that the coolant comes in, I can't count how many times I've had those in the back of the truck or in the back of the Jeep. They've fallen over and they leak, especially if once you've opened them and broken the seal on them. So what I do, I generally will buy the coolant full strength, get one of these empty windshield washer bottles, fill it about half full of coolant, fill the rest of it with water, instant 50-50 mix, with a much more stable base to it. So we still need some more coolant in there. So I'm going to go take this into the shop sink and get some 50-50 mixed up. All right, we can get down in here and we can see that our freeze plug appears to be not leaking. This is a good thing. We'll see how it goes once we get it fired up and get the system warmed up and get some pressure in the system and go from there. All right, now some of you may have noticed when I did the little section on replacing the radiator hose that this engine has a mechanical fuel pump. It has a mechanical fuel pump on it now. While I was waiting for the sealant to cure on the freeze plug, I went ahead and tested the in the tank electric fuel pump, and it was not well. And because those things are so expensive and difficult to come by, I went back into my little hidey hole of parts and found a mechanical fuel pump off of an M151A2. Now, a common thing that guys did with these things, and I've seen it done, they've gone ahead and taken, when they can't get the electric fuel pump, they'll go ahead and replace it with an A2 style mechanical fuel pump, which basically means that this deal right here, this sensor, what this sensor does, this sensor will go ahead and senses oil pressure, will get your oil pressure, and if it does not have oil pressure, it will not allow the fuel pump to run unless you're cranking the motor. So once you're cranking the motor, the fuel pump will come on, and then if you stop cranking without the engine running, the fuel pump will stop. And what this is to do, this is a safety precaution to go ahead and keep the fuel pump from pumping fuel after an accident or if it loses oil pressure. So, but because we're going to go to a mechanical fuel pump, this is no longer needed. We're going to remove it, and we're also going to remove this vent line here that goes to the air cleaner. You can see on the mechanical fuel pump, it has a port right there for a vent line, and so we're going to be sourcing the tubing to go ahead and run a larger vent line from here over to the air cleaner. So we did have little bits and pieces of tubing in the hidey hole stash of stuff off of an A2 motor that I'll never use on private parts, and so it was just sitting there. So this will be a perfect application for that stuff. So at any rate, I'm hoping this wind is going to die down here in a little bit, and so we can get to it. Okay. Now, one of the things that we're going to have to do to change this over to the A2 mechanical fuel pump system is we've got to change this bracket out. This is one of the engine lifting brackets. So go ahead and loosen up the mount that goes between the this rubber mount that holds the upper portion of the radiator in place. Slide that out of there. Now, the reason why we're doing this is so that the hoses here and there's one of the steel lines that go to the fuel pump goes through that mount right there. Make sure this goes on like this. Okay, now this steel line here, this is the one that goes from the outlet side of the fuel pump to the carburetor. Now the motor that I got this one off of did not have the line that goes from the fuel tank to the inlet side of the fuel pump, so I'm not 100% certain what that looks like, seems that I don't have an A2. Okay, that one loose. And I think we're going to have to use a regular 7/16 wrench for that. about a regular 3/8 wrench? There's that. Now we need to put the rubber bumper back in place here, the rubber mount. And it looks as if we're going to have to do some modification there, some adjustment. That's the reason why this is so different in height, because the motor mounts are in pretty rough shape. Yeah, the motor mounts are pretty collapsed, and because all of this stuff is tied together. And because on the 151, this is designed to be pulled out in as one unit, where when you pull the power pack out, it comes out the radiator, the engine, transmission, transfer case assembly, all in one shot. Okay. Now we need to remove this fitting here. Now we get to install a fuel filter onto the carburetor. I'm going to put a little bit of thread sealant. And screw that in. Now we get a section of 5/16 fuel hose, about right there. And a couple of hose clamps. tighten them down. And there we have a fuel filter in line. And line from the fuel pump to the carburetor. Now we have to go ahead and come up with the lines from the fuel tank here, which this is the fuel line coming from the fuel tank over to the fuel pump. And I know there's got to be some metal lines for it, so I'm going to look around in the stuff and see if I can't figure out which one it is, and then we'll be back. Okay, I did find a steel line, this one right here. It's going to come up, over, and across, and then down, and then it'll end up tying in with a rubber line coming from the fuel tank there. So we're going to go ahead and get this rubber hose installed on this end here. Looks like that's going to be 3/8 hose that I need there, at least to hook onto this. Okay, well, in order to attach a fuel hose to coming off of the fuel pump there, we're going to have to take this piece of tubing that was in and amongst some of my stuff. I'm not sure if it's a vent tube or whatever. But we're going to have to modify this in order to accept a 5/16 fuel hose. So we're going to take the tubing cutter, cut that off, throw it on the ground. Remember, folks, throwing it on the ground is an important part of the process. And then go in and chamfer that. And this should be this size here. Okay, and we're only going to do a half of a flare here. Oh, because all we want to do is just bump the end out a little bit to go ahead and all right. To give the hose something to grab a hold of. Alright. It seems that we don't have the fancy little handle for it. Well, let's try this again. There we go. See, we got a nice little bulb there. Something for the hose clamp to clamp right about here and keep that from slipping off. Well, let's get this put on now. All right, well, let's hoping that this is going to work. I know it's kind of hard to see down in there, but unfortunately my tripod won't reach up and over. And I don't have a cameraman today. Actually, I don't have a cameraman any day, so. Well, now that the wind has died down, I can show you what we've got done here. We've got the inlet line here, which is comes over from the fuel tank. This is the pressure line that goes to the carburetor. Comes up and over. You can see we've got the line run to the carburetor. And then this line here runs down to a flexible hose that goes to the line from the fuel tank. And what we did do is, for temporary at least, we put a inline clear fuel filter so that we can go ahead and see what kind of crud we pull from the tank, you know, once we get the tank reinstalled. So we're going to go ahead and try to get the tank cleaned out today, and then hopefully get this back together. All right, we've got the voltage regulator reinstalled. We've got the exhaust hooked back up, and hopefully you can see it. So now we're going to go ahead and get it fired up and let it warm up, and hopefully that freeze plug ain't going to start leaking. And we're also going to check the fuel system for leaks as well. Okay, here we go. Let's get her started. Let's get the choke on, probably about halfway. Okay. sounds really good. Let's go ahead and take a little look around, make sure that we don't have any fuel leaks. And you can see our fuel system here is still somewhat temporary. Getting any fuel leaks over here. But it does not look like it's pumping. That could just be because we don't have much fuel in our little jug there. We're gonna have to get some more fuel in that. Well, she's been running for about 20 minutes. Not seeing any fuel leaks. Not seeing any coolant drips on the ground, so I'm going to say it's probably a success. So the temperature is up, running around 160, and I don't know what thermostat this thing has got in it, if it even has one in it. So we're just going to go ahead and call this a success for now, until we get a chance to go ahead and take it out and actually do a real honest to God test drive on it. But now we got to concentrate on getting the fuel tank fixed.